Hello and welcome to Humans in the Loop, presented by HYPR. So this is our pilot episode of a weekly live stream, and we're looking at the impact of AI specifically on software development. Because that's the field that we're in, and we'll be sharing some insights for navigating the hype, and really trying to find out where the value is. So really what we're intending to do is help leaders and their teams navigate the rapidly changing landscape caused by this technological advancement with AI. So yeah, I'm your host for today's episode, Daniel Walters. So I'm the former CTO of SeekAsia and Chief Product and Technology Officer for Weirdly. And currently I work as a consultant and CTO coach. And you can catch my writing over at GreatCTO.me. And I also write for HYPR at hyperinnovation.io. And with me, I've got Don Smith. How you doing, Don?
I'm good, Daniel. Thanks for having me. So the audience might not know me as well as they know you. I'm Don. I'm a principal consultant at HYPR. I live in the north tip of the South Island in New Zealand, and I've been in New Zealand for about 14 years. I was in Seattle before that. I did about a 12-year stint at Microsoft, and I've been in software development for north of 30 years. Done everything from distributed systems, mobile web, firmware. I was kind of doing medical electronics before I got into the internet in the early 90s. So yeah, been doing this for a while. It's gonna be a good combo.
We really bring a lot of gray hairs to this conversation, Don. You and I with 30 years of career experience each. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting conversation. I think it's an interesting journey for us because we've got a lot of experience, but we didn't necessarily jump straight into AI-assisted development as soon as stuff was happening. In fact, I know from my own personal journey, I was a little hesitant. So yeah, we'll dig into more about that. But we've got a little bit of housekeeping first. So I might just quickly run through that. Firstly, we're happy to take questions throughout the episode. So we've got some questions we want to cover, but we're really interested in what the experience is of everyone else out there. So drop your questions in, and we'll see if we can cover them as we go. We're streaming on LinkedIn for this episode. In the future, we'll stream on other platforms as well. So you can catch us live, or you can catch the recordings afterwards as well. You can see that this was hosted off the HYPR company page, who has presented this. And if you want to catch future episodes, then you can follow the HYPR company page, and you'll get notified when new shows are going live. So that's our housekeeping. Now, Don, have you heard much about AI recently?
How can you not? You definitely can't miss it in technology, but it's everywhere. I live in a co-housing community in not rural New Zealand, but it's pretty close. It's a small town, and even here, the local drama team just did a whole production, 2.5-hour play, and the general theme was AI.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm going to kids' birthday parties, and when you go to pick up, and the kids and the other parents are there, and then conversations like there's a timer down to when does AI come into the conversation. So I get it for tech events, but and then recently just at the local cafe, and then you're like, well, what's the other table talking about? Oh yeah, of course they're talking about stuff they did with AI last night. So yeah, no, it's fairly ubiquitous, but we're going to focus on AI assisted software development for this discussion, which because AI is reaching into everything, but yeah, that's going to be the bulk of our focus today. So I'm really interested, Don, I want to know a little bit more about your journey. So can you tell us, how you started? Like, when did you start to notice that AI assisted development was a thing, and how did you get into it?
I think my first, because I knew that we were going to talk about this, I've been thinking about it, and my first exposure, I think, to AI as it relates to software development actually was a couple of years ago. I used to work with Joshua Weil. He was one of the founders of Dev Academy, where I taught for 6 years. I opened the Auckland campus many years ago and kind of did that for like 6 years. He left, and one of the first things he did when he left Dev Academy was to start teaching people how to get AI to teach them how to program. So he got into it really early. So my first experience was actually with Aider on his recommendation to have, which was of course a command line tool. I haven't played with it in a long time, but my experience was as a command line tool, and it's doing Git operations and other things, and yeah, so it's been in the periphery, it's been in my radar for a long time, but I actually haven't, done the work until more recently. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar with me. Sort of dipping in and out. Like, you're aware that things were developing, and then it was like you might put a toe in, and then go like, "Wow, there's a lot here," and I'm hearing from a lot of different voices, like that all feel like they're shouting from the rooftops about one thing or another. And after a while, I just had to start unsubscribing from some of these voices, because it was clear that some of what was being discussed was valid, but there was just a lot of general hype about AI. And so I think, thinking back a couple of years ago, I sort of had put the shutters on a little bit, but eventually got over that.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're constantly exposed to new technologies, right? New patterns, new technologies, new languages. I mean, it's just in the stream. We're just used to seeing time. And I think that for a lot of us that have been doing this for a long time, and we've seen a lot of these things come and go, we kind of get a bit skeptical, a bit callous, maybe, about the staying power of particular technology and the adoption. I can remember that I've probably been wrong more often than I've been right. I can remember when I first saw React, and I was like, oh my gosh, what a travesty! Like, they're mixing the UI with the behaviors, and they like, oh my gosh, what are they doing? It says, so I looked at it, saw that, went gross, and literally didn't look at it again for a year. Well, we obviously know what happened with React, so we know that pretty much blew up. And when I looked at it again, probably close to a year later, I was like, there's all this hype. Let me look at it again, and I was reminded why I dismissed it the first time, and I thought, okay, well, obviously there's something to it. Let me give it a more significant chance. And I think it's the same way with AI tools, or at least AI-assisted development, as even a thing that you could consider. For many of us, the first time we tried it, it was like clunky. It didn't give us what we wanted. But I think what I didn't expect is that, sure, it's pretty unsuccessful, clunky. It feels more like a toy. It's like, oh, that's interesting. But what you don't realize is that you can make it better, right? Like, it's underperforming not because of it, but because of you, and you don't know how to use it. And so it's almost like going back to the beginning of search, right? Like, I can remember distinctly remembering, there's going to be some people that are much better at finding stuff on the internet because they're better at crafting the search message, right? And so it seems to be similar now.
I like the React example that you had, because I feel like a lot of people's early hesitation for working with React is some of the concepts and paradigms at play there were almost completely polar opposite to what had become, accepted rules and practices. So, the idea of, CSS in JS and things like that being blended together was just, that was like, where's the separation of concerns? And so it's things like that. And I think it's similar with AI assisted development. There's things where, it changes some of the paradigms. And so some of your rules that you've stuck by and have made, have been really useful for you for a decade or longer, all of a sudden are being challenged quite directly head on. So we might dig into some examples of that later on, but I'd like to just acknowledge a few of the people online. So we've got a bunch of hellos. We've got Kevin, who I know from Malaysia. Hey, Kevin. We've got a few anonymous users through LinkedIn. I think that's just a quirk with the LinkedIn platform. Hi from Auckland. Hi, Dan. Okay. Someone knows me. And then we've got 3 questions already. So do you want to jump into a couple of questions and then we'll go back to ours?
Yeah. I should have been looking at that.
So I think one just quick one. We've got what tools are your devs working with day to day? So we could maybe share a couple of things that we've had some traction with. Do you want to start, Don?
Yeah, happy to. The tools that we're using right now is, I think, pretty much all of them. We have our lead DevOps engineer. I know he's playing with Windsurf. I've been playing a lot with Cursor, but I've also just recently switched to kind of a combination of RuCode and Klein. And of course, a lot of chatting with Claude and ChatGPT in their apps. I know that we have other people looking at Cursor. We have people looking at some extensions to the JetBrains tools. What are the ones? Those are the ones I'm aware of.
I recently got onto Jules, so that one, yeah, I don't know if it's ready for prime time, but it's been interesting to play with. And next up for me will be Claude Code, but yeah, Klein and RuCode have been the two that have fit my working style, and we'll talk a little bit more about the different sorts of things that Don and I tackle, because we're coming from quite different places. My job day to day is not really writing code, but I do write some code and do some automation to help my business occasionally. So I'm a very light user, and so I think that affects some of my tool choices. And Don, you're still writing code most days for some of your recent work. So you've got some quite different examples. Cool. Then we've just got another hello from Anthony Mata. Anthony, g'day, mate. All right.
It's funny because the question was around tools, and we answered the question primarily around IDE tools. I'm not aware of any. We haven't started exploring any like pipeline tools, or of course we're exploring using the chats to do planning and to exploration, and of course we're using it to write documentation and things like that. But in terms of like other more specialized tools, I think we will. I definitely think we will, but I've not started exploring those yet.
I mean, I think what's interesting with the Klein and RuCode ecosystem, and a lot of these tools are also relevant for the VS Code forks like Cursor and Windsurf and the other VS Code extensions, is there is practices and other libraries that you can partner with them, like sort of task managing systems and sort of prompt support systems and documentation systems, which we can dig into later as well. So I guess we've been getting, rather than going completely wide, it's also trying to get deeper on specific tools, because that's where some of the value is. So why do you think you initially were a little bit hesitant? What was part of the, what was the experience like? And then I'll share my experience as well.
Yeah, I think it was my early experience was just having it, asking it questions about the code, having it write, the typical things, having it write tests, having it write the implementation for a test. So I was having it do those types of code level things. And it was clear that there was some power there. It was clear that there was some potential, but it wasn't getting it right. And of course, I wasn't very skilled, and I hadn't done kind of the learning that I should have probably done to get the most out of these tools. And so, yeah, like anything, like any other technology, you kind of look at it, you play with it, you kind of get a sense of it, and then you make a decision whether you want to invest more time and energy into it or not. And so, yeah, I think early on, a lot of us are just like, yeah, it looks good. But
yeah, I think that's a good example. Like I see a lot of people who are described as like kicking the tires. So
mm,
it's like, you install one of these IDEs or the CLIs, and then you go and you're like you have a dummy project or something like that, and then you go and run a prompt, and then it does something dumb, and you're like, see, I told you it was going to do something dumb. um, but and so I think it's easy to get discouraged, as you say, pretty early on. Um, and so what do you feel like you've learned since that helps get past some of that initial?
yeah, for me, it was cursor. It was the autocomplete, which was really impressive. I mean, like really impressive autocomplete. Like, whoa, it's reading my mind kind of stuff. I
Hmm.
think, of course, the other interactions, it got better at understanding the code. It got better at writing it, and I did a little bit of research and understood that I can influence it. And in the
Hmm.
better I get at influencing it, the better results it comes up with. So I think that's when I really saw it. Oh, okay. So I can, if I get better at this, then it's going to get better. And it was pretty clear to see the potential. So for me, I think that's what it was. And I'd been dabbling in it like the rest of us, playing with Midjourney or DALL-E or other things. And but it's when it hit software development for me, I think that's when I was like, oh, this is going to get fun, right? Like that's when
Hmm.
it, for me, that's when it really got exciting. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
and this is going to change things. Right?
exactly. It's going to change
Mm.
everything, I think. Yeah. How about you?
So I mean, I guess there was a lot of preconceived ideas I had. So initially, I was like, oh, some people have got, oh, it's just spicy autocomplete sort of thing, and so you've got a lot of expectations from like the previous generation of code
Mm,
completion type tools. And you're like, and a lot of those, I mean, they're great, and they have their efficiency gains. Like, they've helped me do refactorings and renamings and all sorts of automations. But I think I was guilty of thinking that this was pretty much the same. And sometimes it can operate that way.
yeah.
Um, and the second assumption was once I got over that preconception was like, oh, well then actually most of it's just going to be prompting, so you're going to write a prompt, and then that's the way you interact with the IDE, and that was sort of interesting, but still a bit underwhelming as well.
Mm,
Um, and so it takes actually getting on, like actually having projects like real work that you need to get done with this, where you start to go, actually, it's all of these things and more,
mm,
coming together. And what is changing is like almost, your interaction pattern, with the code, with the project, with, what understanding the intent of what you're trying to do and things like that. And so I
yeah.
think that's when the epiphany came. I was like, oh, okay. No, it's not just like how I write code changes. It's like the whole SDLC
Mm,
changes. You know?
yeah. I think about it in two ways. I think there's a solo or an individual change, and then there's gonna be a team change, and I think that ripple is gonna be that's gonna be tough. I think
Mhm,
individual one I think is that's glorious, right? Like it's so
mhm,
much. I'm using it now for, I mean, it's constantly changing roles. I'll use it everything from a junior developer to just crank out some code to a design partner to come up with a good design, to to a mentor. Like, I don't know this library very well. Like, what are some of the ways to use it? And of course, I'm using it as a quicker search tool because I'm already there and it has all the context, so I can just ask really simple questions, like, what's the syntax for this again? And or just write this, and it'll do it. For me, it's given me a beautiful balance of being able to use my skills and its skills in like a really complementary way. For example, the other day I was teasing apart some code, and I put too much in a branch, which is pretty common for me. And so before committing it, I needed to tease it apart, and I thought, oh, okay, let's do this with AI. So, and I think that's probably one of the pieces of guidance I would have is if you're starting with this, whenever you start a new piece of work, pause for a moment and ask yourself, how might you do it most effectively with AI? So I did this, and I thought, okay, I'm going to get the code base up to a certain point, and then I'm going to come up with a prompt and make sure it has all the context, and then have it do what it needed to do. Now, I'll give you a little bit of context. I basically had this concept, which was an event bus, and it went too far into the code. So the coupling was too tight, and it was caught out in a code review, and of course they were right. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool, I'll fix this. It was definitely it was a bit of a design flaw. So I told the AI, this is what I want to do. What would it recommend? Because I didn't really have I just sat down to do it, and I didn't really have an intention yet. So I thought, let's just collaborate a bit. It'll help me get my brain primed for what this is going to do. And it suggested an event emitter kind of style layer. And I saw it, and I thought, yeah, I see what you're doing. I can see where this is going. And it's not horrible, but it feels like there's a more elegant solution. Like, I can't quite pin it, but it feels like there's something better here. So I went and looked through the code a bit more, and I found some other concepts that weren't being used in quite they could be reused a little bit. And so I thought about some ways, and I basically didn't tell the AI what the solution was. I said, I've been looking over here, and these methods on this interface could be used this way if we rethought about this, and that's all I gave it. And it came up with a completely different design, which swapped the relationship of these two concepts. And I was a little surprised, and I thought, okay. And I looked at it, and of course I looked through all the code, and I looked at the implementation, and I thought, yeah, actually, this is good. I like this. This is much more elegant. This is more like what I had in mind. But I actually asked the AI, I said, did you mean to swap the relationship of these two concepts to, I think it was like a composition relationship, and it said, yeah, sorry, I wasn't more explicit, and it explained why and all the value and the benefits, of course. And I was like, yeah, no, I see it. It's good. So it's nice to be able to use it in that kind of collaborative way, so you kind of put as much energy in as you want to in it and still get a nice result.
Nice. I might just pull up another comment here as it's relevant. So this one is from Dominic Farr. The hype cycle has a cynicism cycle, and where they intersect is the real value? ? Yeah, I think the cynicism part, and I am as guilty of it as anyone. I'm also guilty of contributing to the hype cycle. So it's both things can be true at once. On the cynicism side, we had like the whole sort of rise of crypto and things like that. And in some parts of the economy, you could say, yeah, there's some really real stuff there, but it is in other aspects not lived up to the hype as of yet. Got friends working in that space who tell me it's still coming, but so it's interesting. It's like I think a healthy amount of skepticism is useful. It's useful to help you ask the right questions and explore, but it's also you've got to be quite aware of that skepticism there. You've got to be aware that when it is blocking your own curiosity on things. And so those tips you were just offering in terms of the way that you've approached this, I think are helpful, and we'll cover those again in the wrap up before we finish today.
Yeah.
I've got, wow, there's quite a few questions coming in. This is another good one. This is from Michael Draymond King. Does it encourage you to code in a simpler or less complex format?
That's a good question. Yeah, it's a really good question. It's a difficult question because there's the way that I frame AI assisted development or AI in software development is really with two paradigms, and I'll let Daniel just decide when we talk about those. But this question, I think, relates to that because I've done both on the small, because one of the things that you'll notice, if you haven't already noticed this, when playing with AI assisted development tools, is they can be very eager, especially if you're playing with something like RuCode or Claude code, which is designed to be agentic. It's designed to do a whole lot of things with not a lot of inputs. So if you're working even in Cursor and it's just very eager and very, zealous, overzealous, it'll create a whole lot, and it's almost a bit overwhelming. You have to it gives you more to go through, and you have to get rid of a bunch more stuff. So there's a tendency to say, okay, cool, I'm just going to constrain it more. I'm just going to have it create one class and its associated tests rather than a whole module or a whole package. And that there's a place for that, I think. I think the way that I apply that is when I'm still a little fuzzy on the design. I have a sense of which way, like the dependencies and I have a sense of how it's going to hang together. Then I'll go bigger. But if it's small, then I'll go small. So if I'm still trying to figure out the pattern, a small one, then I'll pair with it on small bits. But once, for example, I've already got a piece of an application that I'm working on. It's done with a clean architecture, so it has 4 main layers, and there's very clear dependency rules between those layers, and all of that's been documented now. So I have code examples, test examples, and documentation that describe the whole architecture. So now I can start to explore having it do more than just a single file. So I can start to increase the size of the work I'm giving it.
Let's maybe dig into the two paradigms that you were talking about, because I think it might help help people understand some of the reason why we're using different tools, etc.
Yeah, so I think and what's nice about them is there's in my mind there's 2 main paradigms, and there's a nice bridge. And it can also represent a bit of a journey. At least it's kind of how I've pinned my learning journey onto these 2 paradigms. The first one, most people call AI-assisted software development. So these are tools like Cursor and many of these other VS Code extensions, where they're assisting you. They're augmenting you. You're working with them. They're creating files and tests, and you're treating them a bit like a junior developer. You're onboarding them with context. You're checking their work. You're helping them improve over time. So that's AI-assisted development, and that's probably where that will be where everyone starts, and probably some people will stay there. Then I think on the other end of the spectrum is the agentic development. So this is effectively sending out teams. So you could have a team of agents with one being specialized in architecture, several in mobile development, some in project management, and basically and then an orchestrator to orchestrate these agents. And so that we call that the agentic model. So, and then the bit in between is I'm calling it the tools augmented model, which is really you're taking the AI assisted and you're giving it tools. So now instead of just helping you write code, you've given it access to your browser, you've given it access to your file system and your GitHub repo, and it's doing all of those things as well. So it's not just collaborating with you, but it's also doing a bunch of tasks with MCP servers and tools and other things. So and I think that they build on each other. So that's kind of the trajectory that I'm going, AI assisted to agentic.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of the excitement recently was around Cursor and Windsurf as the 2 sort of big brands where a lot of activity was happening, and both of them are cool and work the way you'd expect. I quickly switched to Klein because I initially wanted more more control, and I also wanted more transparency around how tokens were being used and things like that. I didn't have heaps of money to pour into into this, and so Klein has this model of like, you have a planning mode and then you have an execution mode, and so that for someone who wants to have a fair bit of control about what they do, is a nice model to start with. And then Don mentioned RuCode, which is like a fork of Klein, so another VS Code extension. And so it's taken some of the building blocks there and said, okay, well, we can take that idea of two modes. What about if we expand that to a whole fleet of team members instead? And that's what he's described as the agentic style. So there is quite a diverged group of tools available out there. All the ones we've mentioned thus far, and yes, it can be helpful to go and try a few out, but try based on what your needs are. So Don mentioned, having some real work, and then asking, how might I solve this with AI, and then select the tool based on the ones you're aware of that might be a good fit for that, and try and build up some proficiency in using the tools. I think you can go a lot further that way, rather than going, oh no, there's 50 tools out there, I better go and try each one for 2 minutes each. It's very hard to go and make much progress when you're approaching it in that sort of shallow way. So
yeah. I'd also encourage people to, when you're starting to work with these tools, get into the mindset of training it. I know that for anyone that's spending time in a new IDE, if it's a bit clumsy at first, right? Because you don't know where the hotkeys are, but something about the IDE you like, and so you'll for the first several months or whatever, there's an investment where you'll be in the middle of writing a feature, fixing a bug or something, and you'll notice that you're doing something repetitive, and you'll do an investment to go find out what that hotkey is or what that refactoring is, and you'll do something that will be an investment and time saving later. And I think that same mindset serves itself really well when you're starting to work with these tools. So for example, you could have it write a class and the associated tests for it. And it's just not doing it right. It's just not, the naming's all wrong, the syntax is all wrong, the libraries it's using are all wrong. And so I would encourage you to then say, okay, cool, now invest in training it, right? You create a cursor rule or a Klein rule or some type of context that will fix that behavior in the future, and that investment will continually be paying back. So it is an investment, but it's also learning, so it's good.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the tips that we picked up through, I think it was Jeff Huntley, and some of the stuff he was posting online.
That's right.
Which was like, use the AI to, when it learns something, also to then write that back to the rules. And that can be quite useful, because a lot of what you're managing with these models is the context that you have between you and them. They've got finite amount of context, like think of their, almost like their working memory. And so a lot of the practices and techniques are about what gets loaded into that context, so it can make the best possible choices for each particular task that you're going to tackle. Don, I'm going to bring up another question, because we've got quite a few questions coming from the audience. So I want to make sure that we cover as many of those as we can. Thank you, everyone. Keep them coming. So anonymous LinkedIn user says, what ways of working in mighty changes do engineers need to make to leverage AI tooling?
That's a good question. I would say, it starts with just playing with the tools. What it means for teams, I think, is going to be the more interesting question. But for the individual engineer, I would just say start learning how to work with them. Start using it as all the ways it can be used, as a mentor, as a code writer, as a QA, feedback creator. Yeah.
I mean, I'm finding that amount of sort of useful practices that are being discovered as people are doing, meaningful work with these tools, it's just continues to increase. So, some of the document-driven development practices, where you can create markdown files that might have, the equivalent of your PRD in there, or your equivalent of your architecture documents and other things. Some of those other techniques we mentioned for managing what goes into the context, learning AI-specific concepts like RAG and other ways for loading in information. So there is a growing amount of practices being discovered and then sort of like solidified right now, and so there is almost a growing knowledge base to learn about, and that some of it's moving about. Not all of it is like become a rock hard foundation, but yeah, that's one of the reasons why it is worthwhile to get in on the tools now. It's like you don't want that that to grow so large that it feels completely overwhelming to get involved.
The other thought that I have on this is it's going to change the amount of time you spend doing different things, I think. For many things, it's going to be different than the way the team is working, meaning that I find that I spend more time thinking about the app itself and writing documentations than I do writing code. And so that almost in a way flies in the face of the way that we normally work, because we normally do just enough architecture and design so that we can have enough to start work, and then we track, right? So then we iterate on it and we learn as we go. That's kind of what Agile gives us. And we left big upfront design and waterfall for these patterns, and that's great. But now what I'm noticing is that I'm spending a whole lot of time doing big upfront design. And especially in the agentic world, that's kind of what the agents need, right? They need the big upfront design. But what's cool is that the dangers of big upfront design that we mitigated don't happen anymore, because now we spend all this time creating it and it takes us 20 minutes to do the implementation, because the agent, and they get it wrong, and they're going to get it wrong probably a bunch of times, but you just throw it away and then you change your context, you fix your context and generate it again. So it's kind of the reason I say this is it's not necessarily the way it's going to go, even though it kind of looks that way, but it's more the idea that some of the things that we've held true for now decades are starting to unravel. Daniel mentioned pair programming earlier. It's like we all kind of have a pair already. So what does a pair look like? Is there 3 or 4? They're just what's that look like? I mean, I've done 3 people pairing before. It's a bit messy, but I guess it's a good question, because it could mean that some of the ways of working that we've held true just simply don't make as much sense, because the way that the individual is working is shifting.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I feel like some of the principles hold. Some might not hold, but some of the principles hold. Like I'm often trying to work out what is the fastest way we can learn. So for anyone who's read my blog will see that I spend a lot of time talking about outcomes and context and those sorts of things. And so it's not just how fast can we output some code, but it's more like how can we put a version of this capability into the hands of the people that it's intended to help, and how quickly can we learn, is it helping them or not? And so there's a lot about AI assisted development which is absolutely true to that, because I mean, if you're using the vibe coding tools, maybe what you need first is you need a quick MVP. You might be only a few hours away from having a very impressive MVP that you can put in front of real users and see real usage of.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can't get much more agile than that. So yeah. But specific practices may need to change on the pathway there.
Yeah.
We've got more messages here. We've just got some kudos. I might just get that up on screen just for a warm and fuzzy. So
There were a few
Otolien,
before.
Pence.
There were a few before that we missed. If we want to, I think we can do those fairly quickly. Michael's
Yep.
got one.
So we've got thanks and an interesting and an informative conversation, Otolien. So yeah, you get it. Have you got one you're looking at, Don?
Oh, John or Alan's was asked a little while ago the effect that we're finding on code quality and maintainability. I think the question because the answer is no. No, I think because I mean it kind of depends how much agency you're willing to relinquish. I'm not willing to relinquish very much agency, not yet. I've only just played with the agentic tools a bit, but I haven't done anything serious with them yet. So I'm still spending more time in another part of my learning journey. But no, I'm still very much responsible for what it writes, and so you wouldn't be able to distinguish the code that it wrote versus the code I wrote because I've got the guardrails on quite tight, and so I know the architecture. So yeah, there's every single bit of the code I know, even if I didn't physically type it. So. But if you're willing to relinquish agency and you're willing to let the AI choose the architecture and other things for different types of apps, like the one that Daniel was just describing, then that makes total sense. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also high on the control side, so I'm totally fine if I know I've got a throwaway MVP, then I might do something in Bolt or Lovable, but the rest of the time, if it's something that I'm thinking about putting on a production site, then I tend to be, and that's why I love the workflow with like Klein and RuCode. You can configure them to ask you for permission for almost every step that it takes. So I'm not just managing the context window with the AI, I'm also managing my own cognitive load. So yes, the AI could produce an extremely large amount of information, but I was like, I need to have a sense of what is changing and what effect is that having on the code quality and maintainability as well. Yeah, that's why I happen to like those tools. But I can totally see that with better verification mechanisms, I might in the near future be more comfortable with some of the agentic approaches where more is produced, where after a while maybe I'm not looking at it. But yeah, I think that the tools around the verification side will need to improve for me to have that comfort level.
Yeah, same. I mean, I think that for example, if I had an agentic, so a bunch of agents create a clean architecture that mirrored the one that I mentioned earlier, I would have a lot more confidence it would get it right because all of the rationale is written in Markdown and there's examples in code. So yeah, I think that would, about having the right amount of context.
We've got another question here from Jeremy Lawson. Hi, Don and Dan. Oh, I just realized we're three letters starting with D. Don and Dan. After your up and down personal adoption curve of these AI tools and your two-ish models of use, what about using them do you enjoy now versus not? So Don, you can start.
I love playing with how much control I can have over it, right? Like if I can give it an example, expect by example is a really powerful, because if you can look at something, it can create that really easily with a lot more precision. So it's fun at that level. I think I do enjoy using them. Yeah, I absolutely enjoy using them, and I use them all day. And actually, I don't feel like I have a system just yet. Like I'm still working on my system because I'll sometimes go between the Claude desktop app or the ChatGPT desktop app, and then sometimes I'm just in my editor talking to it there as well. I'll go on walks and talk to it there, and then come back and copy and paste code around. So. I do enjoy using them. Yeah, I very much enjoy using them. I enjoy using them from a productivity perspective, but I think I also enjoy spending more of my time thinking about the app, its requirements, its design, and not about what function I'm going to use or what class I'm going to create. I think less about those. So it kind of allows me to level up a little bit. And yeah, so I very much enjoy them, and I'm enjoying all of them for different reasons. How about you, Dan?
That's sort of the way that that they're a multiplier, right? That like there are it can speed up various different activities throughout the SDLC, and that can free you up for thinking about the things that are important but maybe not urgent. That's like a better architecture or design, or different qualitative aspects of the app. You can think through that, and you can spend more time on that. And I, having coached teams for years, I see a lot of software development teams who are often struggling to make time for quality practices and things like that. Now, I think there's fundamental ways of how to carve out time for that. But these tools actually can also help save you some time, which can be reinvested in these things.
Yeah, like for example, I'm in the process of making a home lab at home, like a whole kind of cloud virtualized environment at home. And I haven't done a lot of networking in years. And so I'm having I'm having some conversations where it's teaching me about VLANs and bridges and how to set all this up in the virtualized environment. But it's also helping me write all of the Terraform scripts and the Ansible scripts and all the infrastructure as code. So it feels bionic, actually. It feels like everything that you want to do is just a little bit more in reach.
Well, let me talk a bit about that, because I think this is what I'm really enjoying. So, I mean, I've been a CTO, a Chief Product and Technology Officer. I've been consulting and coaching executives for the past 3 years on top of that. So, like, as I mentioned right at the top of the show, like, a lot of my time is not spent coding. In fact, most of my job, that is not where I add the value. It was early in my career, and so I'm familiar with most software engineering practices, most software engineering tools. But it's been really nice that with these, like the support of these tools, to be able to actually dip in and get meaningful things done, whereas previously I couldn't. Previously, I'd be like, oh, I've got to, need to build this automation or things like that. And I'm like, I know I've got to carve out, 8 hours. I've got to carve out the whole weekend to get something meaningful done. And now I'm finding like, all right, I've got a particular thing I want to get done and automated. I'm blocking out just a couple of hours, maybe not even, and I'm actually making meaningful progress for it. So I'm really enjoying that aspect. It's sort of like, I just could not afford to be on the tools because of the sort of work that I was doing, and it's become a little bit more practical. Now, doesn't mean I'll be on the back on the tools long term. I don't necessarily know, but I am really enjoying the learning journey.
Yep. Do we have time for another question? Because there's a question there that I would actually like to answer.
Is it?
It's that one, yeah.
This one.
Yeah, that's the one.
So, anonymous LinkedIn user, how would you set up a project from the outset to make max use of the latest AI delivery tools coming out?
I guess it depends. So it doesn't specify whether it's a greenfield or brownfield project. It's similar, but if it's brownfield, if this is a project that's already in the making and you want to add AI to, and you want to start adopting or playing around with some of these AI tools, the first thing I would do is, after you've chosen the tool, ask the tool questions about the code. So give it the necessary context and just have it just ask it questions about the code and start to build the documentation. So you're asking it questions about the code and then asking it to document all of that in markdown files and put it in the docs folder or whatever, but have it write the documentation about what it's learned. And of course, don't just take it for what it says, read it and delete the bits that are superfluous and fix it and stuff. But I would say do that. and then you can start to use that documentation to give it context to start doing other tasks. It's quite similar if it's a greenfield scenario. I would say see how long you can go without starting to write code. Like create your repo, create your README and your docs folder, and then just work with AI. You don't even have to be in your editor. You can do this in ChatGPT or Claude, and just talk about everything you know about the app, everything you don't know about it, all of the design you've done, whether it's architectural or visual, and then just start feeding it information and then having it document everything, and see how long you can go. What you can do if you do that is you can play with some of the agentic tools to see if it can create a whole part of the implementation or the whole implementation, and it's just a learning experience. You'll most likely throw away all the code, but what you can do is you can then just change the context and then recreate the code and so forth. So I would say start with context. It's all about the context. So that's my advice. What do you think, Daniel? Is anything different?
Yeah, I mean, I've been also using it with like static analysis tools, linting tools. I've been using the CodeRabbit review, the pull request review tool, and things like that. So each time you're using these tools, it's providing some context about something that the AI can do for you as well. And so I'm finding it's like when it's getting this really specific, this really specific linting issue or this really specific, then it's got something to work with. And I mean, a lot of what you're looking for is the reliability and trustworthiness of what it can do. And I find that a lot of the concern people have is because they know that generative AI can hallucinate. But it hallucinates depending on, how little or how overloaded its context is, how relevant the context is. And so in order for you to get, any sort of efficiency gain, you need to be able to trust it, and you want to trust that it's doing what you expect. It's following the intent that you're giving it, and the more often that it is, that's when you've got the benefit. So we might be at that point where we can start to wrap up. I've taken a few notes, Don, and we can also use our memories to just recap over some of the things. So we started with our personal journeys, so we were a bit hesitant. There were a number of reasons why, some cynicism, some overwhelm from the amount of hype and activity that was going on, and any others that were causing hesitancy that we mentioned.
No, but a thought that just occurred to me that we didn't mention earlier was that it's normal to feel like you're behind the 8 ball. I mean, I felt like I was late to the party as well. If you're feeling like that at all, you might not be. I mean, yeah, there's been a lot of people working on stuff for the past couple of years, but it's only just now really becoming, really becoming popular. So I don't think anyone's late yet. That's kind of also no one is late. But yeah, we did talk about our hesitancy.
Yeah, we should have next episode, Anthony. We'll set up the AI driven recap. Hey, I'm approaching 50, like, so I still have some things I like to do manually. I probably Fireflies is actually running, so I probably could have looked at the recap. So we had a few recommendations. So things that you can do, apply AI to real work. Don't just kick the tires. Was a point we made. We said use it like a partner or a collaborator. And Don, maybe you also have this idea of onboarding the AI. Do you want to just briefly mention that?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was saying earlier about the question about how do you start a new project is really what you're doing is you're onboarding the AI, right? And you'll benefit from the thinking as well, because, well, of course, what you'll notice is there's some things you've thought about and some things you haven't. So by doing that, it's good for you as well.
and Don had the question, how, asking yourself when you've got something new to do, how might I do this with AI? So I think that's it's a how might we question. It's almost like a design question, right? So you're challenging yourself of like, okay, how can I use it? Now you may be hesitant with that because you're like, hey, what is the one problem I am solving? Well, I can say from software engineering perspective, there is been an age-old quest for improving efficiency, and a lot of people say, "Why for what?" Well, there's always more to do. So, like Don was sharing, making more time to think at a high level about your software and the quality and how it meets user needs is where it can improve not just efficiency but the overall quality of what you're producing. So, and it all starts with how might I do this with AI. Don mentioned about asking tools and questions about the code, and then having it, go and write that into MD files so it can use that almost as a document reserve as well. Any other key tips?
As well, have it write the mermaid files as well. It knows how to write mermaid diagrams, so you can diagram all of your documentation as well, or class diagrams, or all kinds of I had it write a mermaid diagram for the outline of our conversation tonight.
So you're telling me that we're developing software faster, we're getting better quality results, and we're ending up with a better set of documentation than we might otherwise have. Like, this is a pretty interesting space. All right, now before we get out of here, I just had one interesting thing to promote, and then I'll be over to Don. So I was chatting with the team over at Multitudes, and so they were doing a study relating to evaluating the impact of AI on engineering team productivity. So that's pretty cool that there's a team local to New Zealand doing something in that space. So if you're interested in that, then you can check that out. There's the bit.ly link. And Don, what else? What else have we got to promote?
I mean, it's probably clear after our conversation that I'm on a bit of a learning journey, right? Like I think I often describe the way that I learn something as a bit of a toilet bowl, which is a nice metaphor. But I tend to go wide for a while, right? Like I'm going wide, kind of on the periphery, looking at it, trying to find out what the scope and the language and the influencers and who's talking about it, and so I tend to do that for a while, and I feel like I've done that, and I'm kind of spiraling into a lot more focus. I have put together a learning journey for myself. It's about 6 modules that goes from the kind of agentic model we talked about all the way through to the completely agentic, or from assisted or augmented to agentic. And so I'm thinking about as I'm learning and doing these experiments of creating some learning assets, maybe a workshop or some slides or some exercises or things. And so if anyone's interested, or if you know of other people doing that, I'd love to hear about it. And let me know if you're interested to reach out to HYPR if you're interested in collaborating or
we're also getting a lot of questions from CTOs navigating, like there is a lot of hesitancy in their teams, for a lot of justifiable reasons that we sort of covered up top, and so there's the other aspect, which is like, this is a change, and there is almost like a change management aspect to this. So if that's something that you're finding a challenge and you want to talk through what's possible, I'll always happy to have a chat. So reach out to HYPR and we can talk about that. But this has been the inaugural pilot episode of Humans in the Loop. I hope you've found the chat useful, and we're keen to hear about your experiences and your journeys. If you're keen to get involved in the show or come on and have a chat, get in touch as well. But until next week, when we'll have another episode, this has been Daniel Walters and Don Smith signing out.